While you are all here, I want to draw attention really quick to the fact that YouTube has not been showing a lot of my uploads recently to a lot of you. So if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe and hit that bell notification for updates on when we upload, or if you want something a little more consistent, over on our Discord, which is in the description down below, which is a fun place to hang out, talk about movies, games, all kinds of stuff. You are notified every time I upload on either of my channels, so I appreciate that very much. Tomorrow, I'm going to be releasing a video that's very important to me. I'm trying to get into making some more content with the James Bond series, and I know a lot of you like my movie reviews, so this is an in-depth review of 007 GoldenEye, the movie. I'm very excited to release it, but this is pretty much the only way I can tell you it's coming out and guarantee that it gets at least a couple of views. It just won't show you, so please be sure to check that out tomorrow if you're interested. It helps me out a ton. Really trying to branch out here and cover some new stuff, and I'm having fun doing it. Now, to get into the meat of today's story, I feel like a lot of people have unwillingly, like not on purpose, and with no malicious intent, been reading a lot into every time James Gunn says anything. This has been a thing for a long time, all the way back to his jokes that were pretty off color and to me not very funny, but like not really offensive either. It just seemed like, hey, I'm being offensive and edgy to make a joke laugh, like forced humor. And it's gone all the way back from that years ago to today, where now he is one of the people pretty much in charge of the DC universe, which was formerly known as the DCEU, the DC Extended Universe. The films, right? We're talking Batfleck. We're talking Henry Cavill's Superman. We're talking The Rock's Black Adam, Gal Gadot, Wonder Woman. All of these people. This is sort of the storyline he's in charge of now, or one of the leaders of. And recently he was asked on Twitter if him and his partner are planning to give more DC character TV shows that'll add to the story for the DCEU. And Gunn answered, yes, most definitely. The DCU will be connected across film and TV and animation. And a lot of people freaked out about this because there was a follow-up question asked. And by the way, no hate to the people asking these questions. I think fair game, totally fine. James Gunn is a guy who wants to interact on Twitter. Seems like a very nice guy to me. And to my knowledge, he always does his best with responding to people. Someone asked, are there plans for games to be connected to the DCU as well? And he answered, yes. And there were a lot of people that were very worried about that, essentially saying, well, how are you going to connect video games to this? How are you going to connect animation and movies to this? And I saw a lot of people, and I'm not hating on them, because even some people I know that I actually like personally were really worried about this, basically saying, hey, there's all kinds of really good original universes in gaming. For example, the Spider-Man universe or the Arkhamverse, or all these different universes in gaming that work on their own that wouldn't necessarily work as being forcefully tied into the DC universe, the film universe. I hate that they changed that name, by the way. Let me know what you think in the comments down below about that. I really just think that I always thought the DC universe, I always figured that was the comics. That's always how I referred to it. So I wonder what they're going to call the comics now. But anyways, that's confusing. So if I ever say DCEU, I mean the DC universe of films, movies, all that stuff. So I saw a lot of people saying like, well, this means that they are going to connect everything. That every single game, every single cartoon, everything is going to be part of that DC Films universe. And I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that this is a waiting game right now. I think that this is something that people need to kind of settle down on a little bit. And here's why. I want to go through a couple of things with you. First off, at worst case scenario, let's say that was true. That would be dropped after a few years. You know why? Because nobody except Star Wars does that, and people don't even have patience for it with Star Wars anymore. Look at things like the High Republic. Look at the sales of it. There are a lot of people who are just never interested in it. That's canon information, and a lot of people, thousands of people, if not millions of fans, never cared. Part of it was due to online drama, part of it was due to how early on in the timeline it was, and part of it was just due to a lack of interest in that period of time in Star Wars, right? So a lot of people just never bought it. I'm sure there are, bench stones that hit. The problem being that a lot of people point out like the New York Times best-selling blah, blah, blah. You can actually pay to get on that list. You can, there are very easy ways around that whole thing that I don't want to get into here, but I've seen a lot of authors talk about where people will find ways to get their book into the best selling, even if it necessarily wasn't by population. So my point that I'm getting to is the universe I know of that does this, where everything has to be tied together, is Star Wars. And people already, a lot of fans don't have the patience for it because of the amount of material that comes out. You then also have the problem of a lot of people not being fans of this DC universe itself right now, just in general. You have the Snyder Group, who is just fans of Snyder. Let's just say it for what it is. You know, I'm not hating on them. They just love Snyder, and they love the stuff that he made. And that's awesome. I'm happy for them. You know, like, I get it. You love what you love. That's really cool. But they don't care about the stuff without him. A lot of those people. Then, of course, you have the Snyder haters, who, like, their entire personality is hating anyone who liked Zack Snyder or anything he made. And their entire goal is, like, everything related to this man needs to be, like, burned to the ground. They're like the Joker of Snyder stuff. And they don't like anything from prior, you know, like when Snyder was involved, and now they're liking it with, like, the Suicide Squad and stuff like that. So now you already have a very fractured universe in that way. And then, of course, you have fans who are into everything, and then you have fans who are into very specific movies. Then you have fans who are into very specific characters, like the people who just go when Margot Robbie's in the movie, you know, or the people who are just Batman fans. Then, of course, you have the people who just are into these other universes. So worst case scenario, for a few years, it's just this DCEU/DCU that's in gaming, animation, all this stuff. That wouldn't last. But even if it were to, if you want to look at what's been happening lately with just DC animation, there hasn't actually been nearly as much in the past few years as in the past. So if we're looking at it, there's a lot of very okay received things. The whole Tomorrowverse that started, I know people have taken to calling it that with the Man of Tomorrow and everything. Justice Society World War II came out in 2021. People liked it in general. Batman The Long Halloween Part 1 and 2 came out. People really enjoyed those. The Injustice movie came out that was then a standalone. People hated it. Catwoman Hunted came out. It looked really, you know, interesting. It was anime themed, standalone. People really didn't buy it. Just for the most part, like, there's tons of copies at my local Best Buy still just sitting there. And from what I've seen, it was just kind of an underperforming movie. And then you had something like Green Lantern Beware My Power, and most people hated it. You know, and that was in the Tomorrowverse. Then when Batman and Superman Battle of the Super Sons came out, it just didn't really seem like anyone cared. I'm sure there are people who did, and if you did, that's absolutely awesome. Love you for it, but I'm just saying that out of the last couple years of DC animation, I would say all the way back until probably Man of Tomorrow in 2020 or Apocalypse War in 2020, there hasn't been a ton of hype for DC animation. So the point that I'm getting to is right now they're not building on the DCAU, the old one that I really care about. And of course, with the sad passing of Kevin Conroy, they missed a lot of chances to build some more on that. I have my own opinions on that whole thing and whether or not we could return to that I don't think this is probably the best place for. I also think right now, this moment would be a little distasteful of a time to return to that Batman or anything like it. So you kind of have a bit of a closed door in that avenue right now. And then, of course, you have everything going on with DC animation that a lot of people just don't care about. In fact, I would actually argue, leading all the way back, there hasn't been tons and tons of hype on the internet for the DC animated stuff, really, since something like the death of Superman, which was all the way back in 2018. There's been hype here and there, but there hasn't been like a widespread everybody freaking out and being like, you gotta watch this, really, since all the way back there. And even that, when it came out, people liked it, but they didn't love it to death. You know, it wasn't the best thing they had ever seen. I remember there was a lot of hype when Batman the Killing Joke was coming out, and that, I think that nail in the coffin with 2016, not that these movies didn't sell or weren't watched or were all bad after it, I don't believe any of that, but I think that nail in the coffin of people really not liking the Killing Joke animation really hurt a lot of the interest in the animated movies going forward. So kind of, you know, the point I'm getting at is, there is a lot of room in the animation industry to move into the DCEU/DCU, do some stuff with it. There's a lot of forgotten years in that canon that we haven't really explored. For example, Ben Affleck. We never got to see his Batman young. We never got to see how he hit the point of breaking and killing people. And I understand, the point, a lot of people are saying like, well, that was more recent in BVS. A big part of it was his experience in Metropolis. Yes, I know, but how did he get so broken to the point where that that pushed him over the edge? We don't really get to see that. What happened with his Robin? How did he die? How Joker kill him? That kind of stuff. We don't get to see a lot of those things. There is a lot of room in the DC universe to branch out into animation and into gaming, but I do agree with the people who are saying that if everything were to be forcibly connected, if there would be no room anymore for original universes, no room for Arkhamverse, no room for the old DCAU, which still has a ton of room to grow even outside of Batman, with characters like Green Lantern and Hawkgirl. They deserve a show together. That Wonder Woman deserves a show. That Flash deserves, at the very least, a limited series. You could do a show with that Flash and that Green Lantern, Jon Stewart. There's a lot of stuff you could do in the old DCAU that they've just pretty much ignored and neglected. So if you don't have room for those original series, I absolutely agree with you that that's a bad idea. But everything that I've seen James Gunn do, for the most part, has been to the best of his ability in order to make fans happy. He took something like Suicide Squad, which some people really like. Again, great. I'm happy for you. But that most people did not connect with at all, and tried to make it more comic book, tried to make it connect with those fans more, and tried to do more with it that the original movie wasn't able to do. And he's done right by fans with pretty much most properties I believe that he's touched. The Suicide Squad, the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, at the very least these superhero things that he gets involved in. He does know what a lot of audience members want and tries to deliver that to him. Now I've noticed that people really hate on him when they want to, and a lot of the anti-cancel culture crowd, not to make this like a PC thing, but who's like very much against canceling people, I've noticed we're very ready to get rid of him because he's more left-leaning and because of jokes he made in the past. I really don't agree with that kind of stuff. I think that if we're going to have these standards of like, hey, look, words are words, we care more about the heart, and we care about, do you care about the fans? Do you care about the properties you're working with? Are you going to do a good job? I feel like that should apply to everyone across the board, no matter what their political leanings are. So when people are motivated by that to attack James Gunn and get upset about the movies going forward, first off, I think it's hypocritical and unnecessary. And secondly, I also think that it doesn't do you any good. It's just going to make you sit around and kind of feel miserable and upset and chasing invisible boogeymen, essentially. And I think that kind of stuff is just not helpful, and it's going to really, cause a lot of problems in the long run with the fandom that are just not worth dealing with. So anyway, I kind of wanted to talk about this today. I don't really believe what some people are saying about this, that this is going to basically be the death of original universes. I don't believe that this is going to be the death of the multiverse. In fact, the multiverse has been a big draw to DC for years. It's a huge thing in the comics. It's something they've been pushing more in movies now, both between Marvel and DC. And it's something that they clearly care about because it opens up a lot of opportunities to use different versions of characters. I know there has been the whole thing with the Discovery merger, and people worried about, well, there can't be so many Batmen, there can't be so many this and that. But you know what? I think over time that these companies will come to realize that tools like the multiverse and tools like these alternate continuities are what bring in a lot of money too. Look at things like Joker that aren't connected really to anything at all. At most, they just exist off in the multiverse. And yet it raked in the cash, and it didn't have to be connected to anything, and it was relatively low budget. So I think that from a business standpoint, they'll start to figure this out. At worst, what you'll see is a couple years of this, but personally, I don't believe it's a overarching thing. I don't think someone like James Gunn is stupid. I really don't. He's not going to be out here making stupid decisions. It's just not something he does. And in fact, he's one of the most dedicated to the DC fan base and the Marvel fan base as well that I've seen on the creative side of things. And I like that we get to see someone on the creative side of things, a creator who has made movies, being up there in charge of some of the overall formula and structure of that universe. That should be something that excites people, I think. But that's my opinion personally. And I guess just in closing, I think people need to kind of settle down a little bit. It's going to be okay. Even if it wasn't, look at the last X amount of years of animation and movies and stuff. It's been all over the place in terms of quality, both with live action, animated, and even video games now. There's been some quality up and down and even lack of releases in some of those genres of entertainment. So hold your horses. Let's wait and see what happens and kind of hope for the best. But I want to know your opinion in the comments down below on all this. Do you think this means absolutely everything has to be in one universe? I really don't, but I'm interested to hear if you think that. And if you do, I'd just like to know why you think that, because that helps me out a lot. I like to gauge your guys' feedback. Not making fun of you. That's not how I took this. So let me know. Please be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I appreciate you very much. And of course, tomorrow, GoldenEye review. Big deal to me. Really big deal. Please check it out. Really trying to do some more new stuff. I love DC. I've seen some people suggest I only do DC for views and stuff like that. Like, not that I only do it for views, but that I should just stick to it to help the channel. I get it, but guys, I have creative chops. I have stuff that I really want to talk about and share with you guys that I really need to get out there. It's like, it's part of my soul, It's just something I have to do. So I'm glad that you enjoy that stuff. It means a lot to me, and I'm thankful for you every day. I appreciate you all very, very much. Have a fantastic day. And as always, everyone, stay shui.